So, good afternoon or good evening, everyone, depending on where you are. My name is Tina Chapman, and I will be your facilitator for tonight's event. I'm currently the district governor for Rotary District 7790, which serves part of Maine and part of the province of Quebec. I also work for a mental health agency located in central Maine. And like many of you, I have family and friends who struggle with mental illness. So it's wonderful to see so many Rotarians joining us this evening. I have a feeling we'll have a few others popping in as we get going. And I'm very, very happy that you all have joined us this evening to learn about how we can create hope in the world and be proactive around mental health and wellness. So, in case you did not hear the opening comments from Liz, we do have a few housekeeping items for you. So, you probably noticed that this is set up as a webinar versus a meeting. So, that means only the speakers will be visible and the participants will be muted. We're going to ask that if you have questions for the presenters, to please use the Q&A feature, as we'll have a couple of minutes after each presentation for questions. Feel free to use the chat for any other commentary that you would like to add for each other. So the first thing that I am going to do is I am very, very pleased to introduce Drew Kessler. So Drew is a Rotary International Director for 2022 to 2024. He's also the treasurer for Rotary International for 2023-24, and he is a member of the Rotary Club of North Rockland, which is in Haverstraw, New York. So he is a senior vice president of the commercial real estate division at M&T Bank, where he manages a large loan portfolio of real estate and commercial ventures with major businesses in the New York City area. Drew joined Rotary in 2001 at the age of 20. He served as president of the Rotary Club of North Rockland at age 25 and was at the time the youngest president in the club's history. At age 32, he served as governor of District 7210. And he says, for anyone who says that you have to be retired to serve in these positions, I'd like to show you that there's another path. Drew has served Rotary International on the Young Past Governors Committee, as a representative to the Council on Legislation and Council on Resolutions, and as an RI President's representative. He also has held the zone leadership positions, including chair of Zone 2832 Summit, assistant Rotary coordinator for Zone 32, and chair of the Mid-Northeast Presidents-Elect Training Seminar. As a husband and a father of five, Drew prioritizes incorporating family into Rotary events, projects, and meetings whenever possible. All of his children have participated in Rotary, including through Interact, RILA, and Rotary Youth Exchange and other programs. Drew and his spouse, Vicki, also a Rotarian, live in Hopewell Junction, New York. And I'm pleased to welcome Drew for some opening remarks. Thank you, Drew.
Thank you, Tina. And let me just take a moment to really recognize Tina and her team for the efforts to put this event on tonight. Gordon, I do not want to steal any of his thunder, who is going to be following me with significant remarks, really brought forward the concept of mental health in our organization in a big way. We had the opportunity through the Rotary Action Group to touch the surface, but today, for I think the first time, we're really making a focus on something that clearly is on everybody's top of mind. For me, it always comes down to the member and the club experience, right? And asking our members how they're doing. And as Gordon will tell you, and as he does tell you, it's how are they doing really? We are very, very fortunate to be part of this family and to share this experience with others, but it's really a look inside as to how we're doing both in the club, at home, and at work. So I really appreciate the 220 of you that have taken the time to make this a priority today and hopefully all days going forward. We are really, really fortunate to be joined by our Rotary International President, Gordon McInally, who I can share the bio with you, but I will defer that because to me, I want to have him speak and present to us and provide questions, answers to our questions. But it's the man, it's the individual that I am so proud to know on so many different levels and have had the opportunity over the past couple of years to work with, to see how he is a family man, how he is somebody who is so devoted to this organization. And he's somebody that you just want to sit down and have a conversation with, because he's just a real person. And that's what I think I take most about both he and his wife, Heather, who, by the way, it's her birthday today. And rather than celebrating, Gordon is on with us. So I really, really do appreciate that. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our president, Gordon McInally, who, by the way, especially for this group, is a very, very strong Philadelphia Eagles fan. Gordon, all yours.
Well, thanks very much. And hello, everyone. Greetings from Rotary's headquarters here in Evanston and just in Chicago. And can I repeat Drew's thanks to you for joining today's webinar. I hope we all get as much out of it as possible. So today, I want to talk to you about mental health, which isn't always the cheeriest or easiest of topics to discuss. But just because this topic can be difficult, it doesn't mean that we should avoid it. The fact is, there are many people who believe that mental health is all about illness and weakness, but nothing could be further from the truth. Yes, there are some mental health conditions that are diagnosable diseases, and it's wonderful how treatable all of them have become in recent years. But mental health is about much, much more than that. It's about people finding meaning, people finding connection, people finding purpose, understanding, and resilience. And sometimes it's just simply having someone to talk to about the everyday challenges in life. Now, many people build this kind of resilience through religious faith, others by working together in common purpose to help our fellow human beings face difficulties and thrive. Still others find those connections by working with mental health professionals in therapy, conducted either in person or increasingly online. And many people strengthen their mental health by building deep personal connections with family, with friends, and with loved ones that allow for vulnerability, where, as Drew has already said, we freely ask the question, not simply, how are you, but how are you really? Here in the US, the need for mental health services and support is overwhelming. According to the Surgeon General, as many as 1 person in 5 will experience mental health challenges in any given year. 21st century work culture, which may admirably reward a very high work ethic and commitment to quality work, also leads to extremely high levels of individual stress. Long work hours often lead to limited time for family, for friends, and for activities that could decrease this stress. Sadly, we do not place a high priority on dealing with mental health issues in the US. Although things are improving slightly, there remains a strong cultural stigma against discussing mental health. But the US is not alone in these challenges. There are some parts of the world where it is not even permitted to discuss mental health. Rotary, because of our global reach, is uniquely positioned to help change that. We can fight that stigma. We can raise awareness of mental health needs. And we can take a leadership role in expanding access to mental health care. Right from the very start, Rotary has been about embracing our humanity and building personal connections. We've grown into an amazing global network of interconnected community leaders, leaders who share a deep commitment to doing good in the world. But what makes Rotary powerful isn't just what we do for the communities we serve. We also support and empower each other by creating a safe space for our members to bring their whole authentic selves. We show each other comfort and care. I talked earlier about those deep personal connections that are so important for mental health, the ones where people feel safe discussing what troubles them most. Those kind of connections can be built one-to-one right here in Rotary. When we make these kinds of caring investments in each other, we strengthen our friendships, we strengthen our clubs, and we also strengthen ourselves. Because research shows that performing acts of kindness, which is what Rotary does every day of the week, is the most effective step anyone can take to protect our sense of well-being and to make us more resilient to all the challenges life throws our way. I know what it's like to see someone close to me suffer in silence through adversity and be eaten up by it. And I'm sure all of us, perhaps unknowingly, have experienced loved ones similarly suffering. At the International Assembly in Orlando, I shared publicly for the first time how I had seen that all too close at hand when my only brother, Ian, descended into the depths of despair and depression that ultimately led him to take his own life 9 years ago. With the benefit of hindsight, Ian had been struggling for some time, despite being highly successful in his chosen profession and despite having the most loving wife and family. But he just could not bring himself to ask for help. Why was that? Was it for fear of being seen as weak? Was it for fear of being judged? Or was it even for fear of being rejected? We will never know. But believe me, these are 3 questions I continue to ask myself every day in life. I might venture to suggest that one of the main reasons that my brother and so many others like him reach the point they do is that mental health remains such a taboo subject and that mental health services remain in such short supply. I know Rotary can do something about that. I know that the taboo about discussing mental health can be broken, and I know that Rotary can play its part in that. I am confident we can illuminate mental health needs near and far. We can help one another feel more supported as Rotary members and as our neighbours. We can advocate for mental health services, and we can build bridges with experts in the mental health space to help expand access to treatment. The good news is that we are not starting this effort from scratch. The Rotary Action Group for Mental Health Initiatives has been focused on these kind of issues for several years now, and it is showing true leadership throughout the year as we continue to build awareness. When my presidential term is finished, this focus on mental health will live on through the Action Group's leadership. Rotary clubs around the world already have numerous mental health focused projects, and mental health care fits comfortably with several of our areas of focus. There are some great global grant projects already underway that have tremendous promise. And perhaps the most encouraging sign to me is that this initiative is having an impact because the numbers of projects keep rising. In all my time in Rotary, I have never seen a focus so widely and openly embraced. This is the moment. This is the time. 4 weeks ago in Zambia, I met with the Vice President of the country and shared about Rotary's focus on mental health and well-being, and received an immediate commitment that that government would seek to partner with Rotary to address the issue. Only 3 weeks ago in Rome, I had the opportunity to share about it with the Pope, and his reply was, and I quote, "It is necessary, so necessary." So I'm excited and delighted that we have already begun to embrace mental health in the Rotary world. Although it's a focus for 23-24, this will be no one-year wonder. I believe Rotary will continue to work in the mental health and wellness space for years to come. To do this, I encourage everyone to help us erase the stigma associated with emotional well-being. I encourage everyone to help us raise awareness of mental health needs. And I encourage everyone to help us improve access to preventative and interventive mental health services. Yes, it's a big ask, but it is an important task. And I am asking each and every one of you to become champions of this effort. Together, we can make a difference for the world. We can make a difference for the communities we serve, and we can make a difference for each other. And by doing so, in the area of mental health and well-being, just as we do in so many other areas, we will create hope in the world. Thank you so much for your interest in the topic, and thank you so much for allowing me to join you this evening.
Thank you so much, Gordon. You are a true inspiration to so many of us, and we thank you so much for your time this evening. I do have a couple of questions that came in. So from Julie, she asks, our district sent the RI survey out to our members. We also sent it out from our district so that we could see where our Rotarians are in regards to mental health and wellness. It was anonymous. However, some of the reactions, like not feeling connected, not feeling like they feel they have a purpose, were very alarming. How do we reach those Rotarians?
Well, we reach those Rotarians by making our clubs a more welcoming and a safe place. We need to ensure that in the clubs we can be open and we can share the concerns that we have. Because, if we look at the statistics and we see that in America, 1 in 5 people are going to be facing mental health challenges. And in other countries, it's worse. In my homeland of Scotland, the government reckon it's 1 in 3 people face mental health challenges in any given year. But say it's 1 in 5. In an organisation of 1.4 million, that means 70,000 of our own members need supporting. And we need to be there to support them. Because we're not going to be able to make a difference for the community of the world if we're not making a difference and supporting our own community. We're not going to be able to create peace in the world until we've created peace in ourselves. And that means within our membership. So we have to make the clubs a safe place. We have to encourage people to be more open, because it's an old maxim, but a problem shared is a problem halved. And I do believe in the club we can help people at the most basic level improve their wellness.
Thank you for that. And it really ties into Rotary's vision too. What are some specific projects that Rotary groups have found successful?
So there's any number, and I would refer anybody who's interested in looking for projects, looking for resources, to go to the Mental Initiative RAG to have a look at their website, the Action Group's website. But one or two that we're seeing, particularly focusing on young people, and I think everybody recognises that it's the young people who are most challenged at the moment. They're concerned because of climate change. They're showing signs of eco-anxiety. They're concerned coming out the COVID pandemic, where their education was disrupted, their social skills building was disrupted. And so we see in a place like New Zealand, where there was a particular issue, there's a wonderful project there called Think and Be Me, which uses behavioral therapy with young people to improve the way that they think about themselves and the way that they think about things in general, and the fact that they become more open to share concerns. There's another wonderful project that I've seen in India called Wellness in a Box, which is training young people to speak about anxiety and depression. It's also training their teachers to be able to recognize the symptoms and to be able to help. It's pointing them towards local protocols for help. And that's a project that's replicable, because that's also being run out in Nigeria, in Puerto Rico, and in the States itself. So there's any number of those projects that you can find on the RAG website. But the most important thing I always say is that if you're interested in working in this space as a club or as a district, you've got to identify what the specific challenges are in your area, because they're going to be different. The challenges in my area is different, challenges in your area is different to the challenges in South America, different to the challenges in India. So the first thing is to identify what the challenges are, and then look to get into the space.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's excellent suggestions and advice. And I know that you have another event to go to, so I won't keep you any longer, but I just, on behalf of the folks in our zones, I just thank you so much for being here. And I know just from my personal experience visiting our clubs that your theme and your platform and your call to action really resonates with people. So I just so much appreciate that you are bringing such humanity and a sense of really making sure that people can talk freely about what's going on for them. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Tina, and thanks for all you're doing this year as governor. But thank you, everybody, for the opportunity, and have a great time. See you soon, I
Thank
hope.
you. Thank
Okay.
you. Bye bye. All right. So next, I would like to introduce Chuck Ngolia. Chuck is the president and CEO of the National Council for Mental Wellbeing. As president and CEO, Chuck leads the national charge to ensure people living with mental illness and addictions have access to comprehensive, high quality care that affords every opportunity for recovery. To accomplish this, he harnesses the voices and support of the more than 3,000 National Council members who serve over 10 million individuals in the United States. Prior to being named president and CEO, Chuck led the National Council's policy and practice improvement work, directing the organization's federal and state policy efforts to oversee trainings and programs offered to more than 500,000 behavioral health professionals across the U.S. Chuck draws from personal experience and a deep knowledge of the field acquired from more than 26 years professional experience to provide services, including site of service technical assistance to members. He affects change at both the national and state level by playing a major role in policy advocacy and analysis on issues relevant to behavioral health. His efforts center on key issues such as parity, healthcare reform, and improving access to behavioral health treatment in communities. Chuck holds a master's of social work and a bachelor of arts in social work, both from the Catholic University of America. I'm very pleased to have Chuck here with us this evening. Thank you for being here.
Oh, Tina, what a pleasure to be here. And gosh, I'm just kind of blown away actually from the president's speech. The National Council represents organizations like yours, Tina, around the country that provide mental health and addiction treatment. And it's such a pleasure to be in a group like this. Rotary has been such a champion of addressing the stigma associated with mental illness and substance use disorders globally. And so pleased that you have this ongoing commitment. The National Council, in addition to representing organizations that provide care, we're also the managers and implementers here in the United States of a program called Mental Health First Aid, which is an international program started in Australia, now in 25 countries, that teaches people the signs and symptoms of mental illness and how to assist someone who might be having a challenge. I was so taken by President McInally's comments earlier because we think about this continuum that of health to sickness, and I was at a forum last week where we were talking about that a national survey of people asking them if they thought that they were in optimal health. Only about 18% of people indicated that they thought that they themselves were in optimal health. And it occurs to me that that's the same number if you ask people if they have someone in their lives that they feel like they can have a conversation with, a meaningful conversation. Only about 18% of people in the United States right now feel like they have someone in their life that they could have a meaningful conversation. And, so I just want to really talk about programs like Mental Health First Aid, which just enable you to begin to feel comfortable asking people if they're okay, if they need help, what you could do to be of assistance. I know I grew up in a household where my mom wasn't quite like everybody else's mom, but we just did not have any language to understand what was happening with her. Therefore, we could never offer her assistance. We could never get her to a place of optimal living. And I think that's what we want for everyone in our lives. So I just want to encourage Rotary programs to think about how they could interact with National Council members and their organizations. I think it's so true that the needs in every community are so different. But there are organizations in your communities right now that are dedicated to serving people, to providing outreach and support. And the National Council for Mental Wellbeing, the nationalcouncil.org, our website, you can find these organizations around your country. And I would really encourage you to begin having those conversations about how you can support well-being activities that are already underway. You don't have to create something new, right? You have the opportunity to partner with organizations already active in your communities. And don't underestimate also the power that we all have through our own relationships to be of support to others. Don't be afraid to ask people in your lives how they're doing. I think there's a lot of concern that if we reach out and we ask people, that somehow we'll be giving them ideas or planting seeds. And almost universally, it's just the opposite is true, right? People, if they're suffering, they want to know that somebody else is there that cares and wants to be of support to them. Maybe the last thing that I would say is just also for folks to realize that just about a year ago, the United States implemented a 3-digit number that is available to anyone who thinks that they're having a mental health or a substance use crisis. That number is 988, and you could call that number anytime during the night or day in the United States and be connected with a crisis call center in your community. That crisis call center, that have trained people who are there to provide support to people who might be having a crisis. And in most communities, they could also assist you being connected to help locally. The federal government, through SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, has said for years that mental illness and substance use disorders are real, that they're common, and they're treatable. I think we have an opportunity to help all people understand that and to get them connected to help. I so look forward to the rest of the conversation this evening.
Thank you, Chuck. We do have a couple questions in the Q&A, and I think that your comment about meaningful conversations really kind of leads into one of the questions here. So the question is Rotary, along with many other organizations, there is a focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the Dennis, who brought up this question, is also asking about the concept of belonging and how do we address belonging as far as helping with mental health issues.
Well, I think that's this goes back to this whole thing that we're talking about, where people feeling accepted and welcome. And I was really struck by your president's discussions also about how does Rotary make sure that their clubs are a place where people want to be. I know this is something that we think a lot about, even in my own workplace. Do people, or my own board of directors, do people feel like they belong? And sometimes it's just trying to have those conversations. Do people actually feel comfortable participating? I don't know any shortcut, right? Besides having those kind of direct conversations to try to engage people.
So this is a little bit of a different question. And so part of the reason for this webinar this evening is to give Rotary clubs and Rotarians tools that they can utilize within their own communities to help address mental health and wellness. But one of the things that comes up often is the shortage of mental health professionals. And that's not anything that Rotary can necessarily do, but I'm just curious, and I think maybe some other folks are too, what are you seeing as, long-term or even short-term around the mental health workforce?
Well, that's a multifaceted challenge, and we're thinking about it from everything from pipeline to retention. And so we're many of our members have programs where they're going into middle school and high schools and trying to talk to people about a career in mental health and just what it's like to be in this field. We do have some loan repayment programs that are targeted towards behavioral health professionals, and we're trying to expand those. Also, I think there are questions of how do we make sure that remove barriers. So besides tuition reimbursement, we've also see that there are so many requirements related to test taking and other things that could be barriers. And I know there are several states right now that are examining alternative pathways to licensure for behavioral health professionals. I think the social work, I'm a social worker by training, and I think the social work profession did something very brave last year. It published passage rates of licensure exams by race and ethnicity. And it showed that groups that were not white did not pass the exam at at anything resembling comparable rates, and this has led to lots of discussions around alternative pathways. The last thing that I would mention is there are several researchers here in the United States that have developed universal interventions, or teaching lay people how to do evidence-based mental health interventions in the developing world. And now there's a whole movement to bring those to the United States. So researchers at Harvard, Columbia, Johns Hopkins are now working to bring those interventions to the United States, and we're partnering with them to see how we can advance that.
Wow, that's amazing. Really, really awesome. Couple other, I think we have time for maybe one more question. So 988, there does the number track where the caller is? And can you talk a little bit about the area code? I know that there's issues with the area code.
Yeah, this is a very big topic, and there's a lot of debate within the community, or within the country about that. So right now it is based on the area code that you're calling from, and I think we understand that with mobile phones and mobility, that isn't always the best. I think there's a lot of concern, however, about true geolocation and police being called to respond. And so I think there is a compromise underway where it won't be precise geolocation that will be implemented, but it would be like in a cell tower near you. And I said so the FEC FCC, I'm sorry, had a listening session recently, and I think that is going to end up being the recommendation. So it will be closer to where you are, but not exactly where you are.
Okay, right. It's good to know. I know one of our Rotary districts had pens made up with their Rotary district on it with 988 that they give out. So even just things like that, just making sure that they know about 988, at least in the United States. And so getting the word out there, I think is something that Rotary clubs can do as well. So Chuck, you are an amazing leader for us in the United States around mental health advocacy, policy work, resources, training, all of it. And you're so personable and genuine. I think that you are absolutely wonderful. Thank you for being here tonight.
Well, I'm just so impressed by all of you and your commitment to this important topic. And please let us know how we can support these efforts going forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I hope you hang out for the rest of the webinar.
I totally am. I totally am.
Cool. Great. Thank you. All right. So the next person that we have who will be speaking with you this evening is Dr. Valerie Gurdisa. She is an authentic leader who has made a lasting impact in healthcare and public service. In March 2020, she took on the role of CEO and Secretariat at the CMHA Simcoe County branch. With over 3 decades of diverse experience spanning the public, private, and nonprofit sectors in government, Valerie is a distinguished and influential figure. Her journey in healthcare began in 1988 as a nursing student at the Mount Sinai Hospital in Toronto. Since then, she has risen through pivotal roles, including Chief Nurse Executive, CEO, and Assistant Deputy Minister. Valerie is renowned for her unwavering commitment to innovation and research, having served as the Executive Vice President for the Thunder Bay Regional Health Research Institute and transforming the research and innovation branch at Alberta Health. Valerie excels in large-scale transformation initiatives, spearheading efforts in care system redesign, governance, integration, budgeting, quality improvement, and innovative workforce strategies. Her groundbreaking PhD dissertation, funded by the Ministry of Children and Youth Services, explored the impact of mental health service integration on overall system performance. Valerie fosters a culture of collaboration, harnessing the creativity of internal and external stakeholders to co-create people-centered solutions. With a passion for enhancing lives and outcomes, she continues to be a driving force in the healthcare landscape, both nationally and globally. I'm extremely pleased to welcome Dr. Gradisa.
Thank you, Tina. So delighted to be here today. And I think I might take us in a bit of a different direction because I think both Chuck and Gordon really hit home some of the important messages around purpose and meaning and starting where people are at. And I'm going to talk especially as someone that's worked on both sides of the border and have been educated on both sides of the border, a little bit about the Canadian landscape, and then just some of the thoughts I have in terms of the incredible work that the Rotary is doing. Just make sure that I can move forward. Okay, I had to, before I start though, I had to do a special shout out to the Rotary Clubs of Barrie, Huronia, and Collingwood, South Georgian Bay, who invited me to speak today. So thank you to both district governors. So I did want to just start in terms of listening even to what Gordon was saying about the American landscape related to mental health care. And it is important that you understand north of the border in Canada, we do have the Canada Health Act that establishes criteria for insured health services and extended health care. And it's really important within the Canada Health Act that individuals receive health services without direct charges at the point of service. So what does that mean in Canada? What it truly means is that if the provinces and territories meet 5 criteria and 2 conditions, then within the funding envelopes that exist, then they will actually be funded by the federal government. And it's only 20% of the funding actually comes from the federal government. I think there's a lot of unknowns. So that's important when we think about solving some of the policy issues or funding issues that exist for this subpopulation. And the conditions or criteria are public administration. So it must have oversight from a public sector body, including usually it's a not-for-profit organization or a regional body that oversees the healthcare services and receives the funding from the provincial government. And the provincial government receives the funding from the federal. And then they have to be comprehensive, universal, portable, which means across the nation, you should be able to have the same standard of care, and then accessible. And then there's these other criteria. Why am I getting at kind of the Canadian context? Because I think, there's this assumption that just, Canada being a smaller nation, that the systems are quite similar, but they're really not. Just like the United States, you have large health system providers and or state providers. In Canada, we have the provincial and territorial governments driving the approach to funding the health system. And that, is a barrier or a facilitator to actually providing services for mental health care. And I just thought I'd share some huge kind of important points around if we're truly ever going to transform the mental health system, what needs to happen. So I already mentioned the 80-20. So the provinces and territories are on the hook for 80% of spend. More than 1/3 of government spend that's combined is on healthcare in Canada. On a GDP level, that means 12.2% of Canada's GDP, or almost 8,500 per Canadian. And more than 50% is spent on hospitals, physicians, and medication. And even within the Canada Health Act, it's really only hospital-based care and physician services that need to be funded by the federal government. So it's the provinces and territories that fund the mental health services and supports. So just in terms of the spend, if you think about that, $331 billion. In Canada last year, only 7% of that $331 billion was spent on mental health care. And yet, so that's like in terms of service delivery, and the OECD recommends 10 to 11% investment. So we're below the investments in mental health care. And I just want to make it clear, as a Canadian that's worked on both sides of the border in healthcare, it's still a huge gap in terms of truly funding to the actual need of our population. And yet we spend more than $1 billion on estimated costs related to mental illness and substance use, including the healthcare costs, but lost productivity, criminal justice issues, and reduction in overall quality of life. So, we still haven't gotten it right in terms of the spend and the investments that we should be making in healthcare versus the actual cost to society. So I am actually representing a CMHA branch, and CMHA branches are part of a national federation that were established in 1918. So there's 11 divisions in all the provinces in one territory. And then there's branches across the nation, and we serve more than 330 communities. I'm actually in Simcoe County, that little red circled dot that's just north of Toronto, and includes a large population of individuals, and we provide services just in my little agency. I call it little because the branches are small, just over 10,000 people, and meeting the local needs across the full continuum of need, from crisis services to mental health counseling, to addiction services, to housing supports. We house hundreds of individuals with supporting housing supplements that are funded through our provincial government. And I could go on and on about the diverse range of services and supports. If you think about where Canada's at, and we are, just so you know, our American counterparts, we are just actually implementing 988 as well. So, lessons learned from the other jurisdictions. And there was a call out earlier this year, and it's being facilitated now in terms of establishing the 988 infrastructure. We had at a local or provincial level different crisis call centers. So now it'll be a national program. And so when you think about what CMHA is doing, and this is where I see the Rotary getting involved in our organization, is so many of the different goals that you have with your, erasing stigma and raising awareness and building peace. These are really the focus of our agency. So there's the policy planning, lobbying, advocacy side, and then there's obviously the service delivery side at the front lines. And really, the one thing that was passed by the board nationally, and it's something that's really incredibly important, that mental health is a universal human right. And we all agreed with that through a vote. And I think it's something that, is important for a discussion around our understanding of mental health. And, I think it was so important, Gordon highlighted, people think of mental illness. And really, at the end of the day, all of us are every day getting up and trying to contribute to having the best possible day, and ensuring that our emotions are in check with our thinking, which is really our cognitions, and ensuring that we stay on the side of being mentally well. And that's a struggle. I mean, even with the events over this weekend, each one of us, it affected us in different ways. And for any of us that have had trauma or been involved in situations where there's terrorism or war, and, it will impact them differently than others. So our histories and our trauma histories are so important. So based on the understanding of mental health as a human right, there's kind of 4 main areas of focus in Canada that we're really, ensuring that must be met. And that is that every individual has access to mental health care and mental health services. But we don't see mental health care as being enough. And often, especially with the clients we work with, it could be housing, employment, it could be, something related to a criminal justice issue. And so we have a lot of transitional rehab programs where we help individuals transition out of the justice system back into society, and help support them in terms of their mental health and well-being, and or if they have any substance use related problems. Protected from discrimination and stigma, which is an important goal within your agency, or within the Rotary. And I think that's incredibly important. And then free of violence, mistreatment, and abuse, because we cannot underestimate those impacts. So again, when I was thinking about how Rotary could be involved, obviously from an agency perspective representing CMHA, the focus on social change and systems change. And there's just 4 kind of areas: the influence, and really developing the norms, beliefs, and behaviors, and the language and communications, and creating the space like you are today to have this conversation. to be part of that public advocacy, and you're already working on that, but in your local communities and supporting different public policy positions and then advocating for change. So many of you are working in different sectors and you could have key impacts. And, you've already, I know because I was speaking with Tina that you have in your communities created these investments, but really this is evidence-based results in relation to some positive return on investments, whether it be being involved in health promotion and illness prevention programs. Obviously, Gordon highlighted that early intervention aimed at children, youth, and families. They've really been impacted over the last 5 years, missing so many of those key milestones and or social connections. Scaled up treatment for depression and anxiety. So for instance, in my jurisdiction in the province of Ontario, there's new provincial programs over the past 5 years where now cognitive behavioral therapy, so psychotherapy, is now free for all Ontarians if they meet certain criteria demonstrating that they need that treatment for depression and or anxiety, and it's offered through virtual and or an in-person means. So again, that took a lot of lobbying and support and evidence-based policy development to understand the importance of these time-limited intervention programs have huge significant impacts rather than waiting for depression to actually have long-standing impacts on an individual's life. So early intervention is so important. I know that you're involved in so many different training programs. We've been sort of changing the suicide prevention to more positive language, life promotion, affordable housing programs. So I really believe Rotary members can really think outside the box. I'm going to show you quickly a quick initiative that I'm involved in, trying to do a triple P partnership related to affordable housing for people living with mental health and or substance issues, and then obviously contributing to workplace mental health programs. And Chuck seems to be the one that would be the great resource for that, and I'm sure some of you have accessed him. So even this simple initiative that I'm going to show you, I'm working right now with some developers in a private-public partnership to build affordable and supportive housing in one of our local communities that would be really dignified housing. This is what it looks like inside, for people to have that roof over their house in a dignified way, and then they can actually have the housing supports. And in our province, there's what are called housing supplements, where a large portion of the rent would be covered so that people can find that meaning and purpose and potentially have employment and be able to live in a dignified way, like every single human should have that right. So my take-home messages, I think it's always important for us, and we heard that messaging so eloquently from Gordon and Chuck, to know that we've only walked in our shoes, and that we really don't have an understanding of any other person's lived or living experience, and to remind ourselves of that. And just to, support any type of interventions and develop that knowledge of all the different types of mental health issues or substance use problems, and just that they have different impacts on different individuals. That importance of spending time with loved ones and family, I think, Gordon highlighted that so well. And then just being an advocate, even if it's just retweeting or sending out something or liking a post related to the public awareness campaigns that are led by the Rotary. And then finally, the final message, and I want to thank you all, is that I think one of the things I always say to everybody is, the brain is the most complex organ system in the human body, and yet we seem to have a lack of tolerance for individuals when they have what I consider our brain related issues going on in terms of their ability to cope, because the structures might be impacted, the electrical impulses might be impacted, the neurohormones or neurochemicals. And so it's so important that we think of this organ as the most sophisticated and complex system. And it's actually, I think through the grace of God, with all of the stressors coming at us every single day, that we aren't struggling more. I mean, I don't know if it's 1 in 5 or it's, 1 in 2 by the time we each live through our lives, because all of us have those stressful periods in our lives. But I think the more we understand and we accept, and I think of the investments, the research, the money, the empathy that goes into cardiac research, and how can we not actually make that same focus in brain health, especially as it relates to mental health and well-being. And just thank you for all of your efforts today in addressing the stigma. You know, we see it every single day in my daily business, and it's so important that we have organizations like the Rotary making that impact. And remember that advocacy is needed. So if 20 to 25% of our populations are impacted, and yet, for instance, in my nation, only 7% is spent in terms of investments, we're never going to address the problem. So the more we all have that common language about the societal issue, the more chance that everybody will believe that there is no health without mental health. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gerdisa. So we did have a question in the chat, and I think that you actually addressed the answer, but I'll just ask it in case there's anything that you wanted to add. So talking about some of the treatments, like the groups that you were talking about, like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, that there's an enormous need, and many people are kind of on the edge. Is how can Rotary make some immediate changes? Because some of the things that you're talking about take a long time, like advocacy and reducing stigma. What are some things that Rotarians can do right away?
Well, I think, you know, I don't think you can do anything until you actually establish a common understanding or baseline understanding and awareness. So I would say in your local communities, reach out to individuals like myself and have develop an understanding of what services and supports exist, what, opportunities are there for advocacy or fundraising or getting the message or the brand out. I think though, for where we start with our communities is just that basic conversation about, and I'm calling it brain health or mental health, because I think the more we as human beings can really understand having good mental health is truly a privilege, or a genetic privilege in some ways, because really we are all being assaulted with stressors every single day. And it is the randomness of life that some people develop these illnesses and or have the genetic predisposition. And I think the more we understand that, the more there will be tolerance and, hopefully one day, a lack of stigma for individuals facing. So I would say the simple way, and create those conversations at the Rotary level, at the family, personal friends and loved ones level, and seek out, local experts to have conversations with. We welcome speaking at community groups all the time.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So I know you mentioned Chuck and President Gordon were very eloquent. You also were very, very eloquent, and I can see how well thought out and strategic and integrated your vision and your mission is for your organization. So it's clear that you're doing an exceptional job. And I know somebody mentioned in the chat that your statement, mental health is a universal human right, is brilliant. So thank you for sharing that with us. And thank you for being here this evening. It's a privilege for us. So I appreciate it very, very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Welcome. All right. And now we have a nice example for you to hear about a project that's been done at the Rotary District and club level. We have Collier Smith, who is the current district governor for District 6380. He's the mental health chair, and within the District 6380 mental health initiative, he has led 4 E-Race the Stigma on Mental Health marathon races. This event was solely dedicated to mental health, with part of the registration fee going to the participating mental health organizations. They had 1,100 enthusiastic participants. Videos from Senator Debbie Stabenow, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and former Chief Justice for the Michigan Supreme Court, Bridget McCormick, all shared what they were doing for mental health. Some shared their personal stories and encouraged them to put on their running shoes so that they could erase the stigma in mental health. Collier became a member of the Rotary Club of Ann Arbor in 2007, heading up Rotary Tutors. He developed a team of 20 volunteers, which accomplished in 1 year 600 volunteer community service hours at the local public grade schools. Kids still talk about Mr. Collier and his invisible dog, Emilio Pucci. In 2016 and 17, Collier became president of the Ann Arbor Rotary during the club's centennial year. Ann Arbor Rotary is the largest club in the district, having a high of 336 members during his presidency. We're all jealous. Prior to Rotary, Collier enjoyed 14 years in banking with Citicorp, then with Standard Federal Bank, which eventually became ABN AMRO. He's a graduate of Texas Christian University and Northwestern University, Kellogg graduate degree in marketing. Collier and his wife Annie have been married for 36 years. Welcome, Carl.
Thank you, Tina. Good evening, everyone. And I'm going to take the perspective of a parent of a son who really struggled with mental health challenges. My wife Annie and myself, we're not quite sure when Cam, our son, first showed signs of anxiety and depression. But by 8th grade and throughout high school, we were doing everything we could possibly do to help him get the help and support he needed to manage through this debilitating disease. And it is a disease. It's not something you just snap out of. With Cam, with many people, sometimes when you have depression, there are some that start self-medicating. And for those that self-medicate, sometimes this becomes a full-blown addiction, which is where Annie and I found ourselves with our son Cam his freshman year in college. Now, when you think of someone who's depressed, who's an addict or a drunk, you probably have a visual image of what that person looks like. Someone like our son will look like this. You really can't judge a book by his or her smile. And Gordon alluded to that earlier today. Cam realized he had a problem and so sought out help. And with all the enthusiasm that a parent has the first time that our son or any son goes through a program like that is he'll come out, things will get better, and we can get on with our life. Unfortunately, both the depression as well as the addiction, these are chronic diseases. They don't go away. They'll be with Cam for the rest of his life. So we experienced joy coming back, things were going well, and then a relapse, and then back into a program. Eventually, Cam found a program out west with great therapists. He worked through the therapists, and he was clean and worked on helping his depression and anxiety. Clean for 6 months, and we went to visit him and along with other parents, and we shared stories and we worked with his therapists, and Cam wanted to come home for a long weekend, and we worked with our therapist discussing this, and they said, well, not during the holidays because that's when relapses happen like that. So we agreed on January, and I picked up Cam January 10th. We had a great discussion during the days, and then on the last day, January 12th, we were going to play basketball just to get some exercise. And I went up to his room, and it was just like high school again, sacked out. And come on, Cam, we're going to play basketball. Let's go. But as I got closer, I realized something wasn't quite right. And when I got to him, his pillow was pasted to his face. I called 911 and did exactly what they told me to do. And eventually EMT came in. They took over, and I was so thankful because now we've got professionals there. Cam will probably end up on a stretcher. We'll go to the hospital, and we'll pick up the pieces and go from there. Cam did come down on a stretcher. Unfortunately, he was in a fully zipped body bag on his way to the county morgue. And I have to tell you, my life disintegrated. The stigma and the shame. Why didn't I see this? Why didn't I do that? Why? It was so overwhelming that at Cam's memorial service, I wouldn't even look up because I knew The only people that would show up were my immediate family members. And how fair was that for Cam? I didn't even listen to our minister because in 3 days, Annie and I were on our way out west to pick up his belongings, which I could feel in my arms. And if that isn't a big dose of finality, I don't know what is. Well, I'm waiting down at the social hall after the service and waiting and waiting. And it turns out the minister, who was instrumental in helping and supporting me become a deacon at the church, gave a sermon out of the park. It was just unbelievable. They're still talking about it 5 years later. And eventually people came down. And the people that came down were kids that I hadn't seen since grade school, friends of Cam, and then high school, and then his girlfriends with their parents, and then friends that I know him from Chicago, where I grew up, and Quincy, Illinois, where Annie grew up. Oh my gosh, the place was flooded. I could not believe it. And if it wasn't so fantastic at that point, all of a sudden all these Rotarians came in, not only from the Rotary Club of Ann Arbor, but neighboring clubs, and as far out in Canada, Chatham, Kent. I went from self-loathing and hate to seeing all the warmth and love and the support and help that both Ann and I received during that time. And that was within 90 minutes. In fact, I went up to Barry Fraser, who was a past district governor from Chatham, Kent, Canada. And I said, Barry, I know that you're setting up a mental health initiative. And what I've gone through, I think this would be real beneficial for me, and I think I could help out and support. And out of nowhere, because Barry didn't see this coming, nor did I, this woman comes out of nowhere and says, no. And I'm thinking, I think this would be good. And you're saying no. Well, it was Carolyn Fraser, Barry's wife. And she said, no, Collier, you and Annie need to heal. You need time to get better. You need time to be with your friends, your church. And when you get enough time, then come back, because there'll be a place for you. Oh my gosh. I looked at Barry and Barry looked at me, and Barry said, yeah, what she said. What else is it going to say? Because she was right. And eventually I did get better. I mean, grieving will never end. But I did get better, and I started sharing my story with friends. And I met this person who I listened, she gave a presentation from the Livingston Sunrise Club, about half my age, incredible poise. But she shared how she lost her younger sister to a drug overdose, and the stigma that everyone faces and the shame. And that just blew me away. And I thought, this is what I have to do. I don't know how, I mean, the poise that she has, and she's half my age, I don't know I'm going to do that, but this is what I need to do, because I looked around and it resonated with everyone. And so I started putting together what I went through, and sharing with people, and sharing it with the Stevens ministry and the church, and then smaller Rotary clubs, and then larger Rotary clubs. And as I was going through, people would ask me, well, what can we do? Surely there's got to be something we can do. And I wasn't thinking of that, because I was just trying to build up the awareness and try to disengage all the stigma. But the drumbeat of what can we do? What is it that we can do? Collier, just let us know. And I couldn't really figure it out until last week. I go to a Livingston Twilight Club, and this woman, Kim Legers, she was sharing the fact that during the pandemic, she had a friend that she knew was probably suffering. And she called her friend, and her friend was just isolated and depressed. And by sharing and connecting with her, a friend felt better. She went to get her some food. And Kim said, boy, if I've got one friend like this, I may have some others. And she started calling friends, and she found out the isolation and despair and being depressed. And she lifted their spirits, and she found out she lifted her spirits. And so I said, this is it. We all know someone that we can reach out to. And whether it's 1 or 10 or whatever the number is. And this was confirmed 2 days later, I'm a district governor, and I'm a little overwhelmed. I don't know how the other ones are doing it, but I'm making all these visits. And this one visit, the president is the sheriff of Livingston County, and Sheriff Murphy, after I got done with my talk, said, surely there's someone we all know that we haven't seen in a while that we can call up and reach out to. I thought, this is it. This is what we can do. We have friends out there, even if it's Rotary or some other organization we can reach out to and just help them through and see what's going on, and be a friend and encourage them. My gosh, that made sense to me. And I'll share that what I have learned, and the message I would share with all of you, is that when we have the courage to find our voices, we help others find theirs. And when they find their voices, make no mistake, we are creating hope in this world. Tina, I appreciate your opportunity to share this story. It's never easy, but it's necessary.
Thank you so much. I think that we talked earlier about how talking about these things, it really requires one to be brave. And that's how I have, ever since the moment I met you, have thought of you. And you said that somebody else's story resonated with everyone. And I think that your story has resonated with everyone here tonight. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
So I will move to Maydeen. Let's see. Maydeen Despinouda received her bachelor's degree from the Pennsylvania State and her master's from Fairleigh Dixon University in Teaneck, New Jersey. In her more than 25 years in the field of mental health, she has worked in various areas of mental health, which includes residential counselor, case management, partial care programs, and held supervisory positions. Currently, Maydeen is the Director of Self-Help, Advocacy, and Education at the Mental Health Association Parsippany, New Jersey office, a position she's held for 13 years. Maydeen is responsible for running a wide range of programs and provides presentations and trainings about mental illness, stigma, etc., to business, schools, treatment providers, houses of worship, law enforcement, and the community at large. She is a certified mental health first aid instructor, disaster response crisis counselor. She sits on the Community Involvement Advisory Board at Rempeyro University School of Social Work, Morris County Stigma-Free Committee, United Way Caregiver Coalition Steering Committee, New Jersey Consumer Public Policy Committee, the Mental Health Advocacy Group of Rotary District 7475, Girls, Guts, and Glory, and most recently became a member of Lead Morris out of the Morris County Chamber of Commerce. Please welcome Maydeen. Oh, you're still muted, Maydeen.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. It is truly an honor to be asked to speak to all of you today. Collier, your story is something that resonates with me so deeply in all my years in working in this field. I've heard it so many times, and it's still as if I heard it for the first time. It hits home, and it can happen to every single one of us. So I applaud you, caller, for sharing your story and helping others who are experiencing the same struggles or some of the same feelings that you are going through, and helping us, giving us hope, knowing that we too can be a walking testimony in hopes of helping others. As Tina stated, I've been in the field for over 25 years, and 25 years ago, mental health was not talked about. It was very much kept in the dark. When I was a case manager and scheduling appointments with clients or patients that I was seeing for the first time, I would call them and they would ask me what kind of car I was driving and if the car had any identifying features that stated the agency I worked for, because they didn't want their neighbors knowing that they were getting mental health treatment. Others would not come to our office because they didn't want to risk being seen by someone that they know going into the building that had the mental health association on it. We fast forward to today, we have World Mental Health Day. This is something that wasn't acknowledged back then either. I have seen where we have been, and I'm excited to be a part of where we are going. And I want to applaud Rotary because you are truly shining a light on mental health and using this platform to provide education, resources, and hopes to so many. You are truly making a difference with mental health. I'm a firm believer that all health starts with mental health. Mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, how we feel, and act in different situations. It also influences how we cope with stress, relate to others, and make healthy choices. Mental health is not a fixed state that you either have or you don't have. It can change over time depending on various factors such as life experiences, your environment, your biology, and your lifestyle. Therefore, it's important to take care of your mental health and seek help when you need it. According to the World Health Organization, mental health and substance use conditions are the leading cause of disability in the United States and Canada, affecting all ages and backgrounds. 1 in 4, well, depending on what stats you look at, it's either 1 in 5 or 1 in 4 adults experience a diagnosable mental health disorder in a given year. 1 in 17 adults live with a serious mental illness, yet more than half will not seek treatment for a variety of reasons. The main reason people fail to seek help is due to stigma associated with mental health, as well as other barriers such as practitioners, costs, insurance, or lack of, and the list goes on and on. The suicide rate in the United States is 50% higher than that of Canada. Every 17 minutes, another American dies by suicide. So we've been on this call, this Zoom meeting, for about an hour and have already lost 5 or 6 individuals to suicide. On average, 130 Americans die by suicide a day, and another 1,500 attempt suicide, compared to the 200 who attempt suicide in Canada. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among people ages 10 to 24. And in 2020, we had almost 46,000 Americans died by suicide. 6,062 of them were between the ages of 15 to 24. These statistics show that mental health is a serious and prevalent issue that affects millions of people in the US and around the world. It is important to raise awareness, reduce stigma, and provide support and treatment for those who need it, which brings me to the Rotary Club of Mental Health Advocates, which I'm a proud member of. Members of the Mental Health Advocates are part of a cause-based group in Rotary District 7475 from 9 counties, working with and through the 80 clubs of Rotary District 7475. The mission is to bring awareness of mental health issues and substance use disorders to our community. We partner, collaborate, and support organizations and agencies dedicated to mental health and substance use disorders. We meet twice a month to discuss topics, learn about community resources, plan events, and mental health trainings. We also take part in 1 day of service a month, whether it's a local project, health fair, participation in a community awareness initiative, mental health and stigma-free walks, Narcan training, mental health first aid. Chuck talked a little bit about mental health first aid during his presentation, but mental health first aid was something that all the members of the mental health advocates took part in so that they're armed with the tools needed to help someone who may be on the verge of a mental health crisis or in the midst of a mental health crisis. We also do presentations to clubs, schools, and so much more. In addition, the Mental Health Initiative Rotary Action Group District 60 has rolled out. We are a brand new independent Rotary affiliated group made up of people from all around the world with experts who are experts in a particular field such as economic development, peace, addiction prevention, mental health, water, etc. The action groups offer their technical expertise and support to help clubs plan and implement projects to increase our impact. We have formed a district chapter, which consists of all the 9 counties that we are a part of. Our vision is to create and support opportunities for all to improve their mental health and wellness to healthy, happy, and productive lives. Our mission is to break stigma, raise awareness, and also to help people gain access to treatment. In closing, I want to remind all of you that mental illness does not discriminate. It knows no age, it knows no gender. It can care less if you are rich or poor, housed or homeless. Mental illness is real, but recovery is possible. So I challenge all of you. I challenge all of you to be ambassadors for change. Help us break the stigma around mental health. Help raise awareness in hopes of helping so many, especially those who are suffering in silence. Thank you so much for having me. I hope my information resonates with any of you, all of you. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Nadine, we do have a question for you in the Q&A. Why do you think the rates of mental health disability and suicide have increased so much in the last 30-some years?
There's so many factors. And I actually think that the numbers that are reported are actually a little higher because some of these accidental, crashes, let's say, or overdoses, they're called accidental for a reason, but they could potentially be suicide. I think the numbers have increased because many of us are lacking coping skills. COVID really shed a light on mental health. Our youth, our young adults are struggling a lot with just coping and managing. I even saw it with my own daughter. She was in high school during COVID. She was junior, senior year, and going to college, just lacking that ability to connect with other people, talk to other kids. She had no friends her freshman year in college. And I was like, what's wrong? Why aren't you talking? She's like, it's different. It's not the same. They just lack that skill to communicate. I think we've lost so much during these last several years, and that's been a struggle for individuals to deal with and cope with. Job losses, deaths, changes in family dynamics, income, cost of living, and on top of that, the added stressors that we're dealing with, now more wars. It's just people are really struggling with trying to grasp what's all coming around them. And at times it just gets a lot harder. And there's more to this. I don't have a quick answer, but the rates are definitely going up and the ages are getting younger.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which is saddening. I did a presentation a few months back, and I put together like a PowerPoint with different pictures of individuals we've lost to suicide. And the youngest one I found was 6 years old.
Oh,
6 years
old.
Gosh. Yeah. Being bullied in school led to her hanging herself when she came home. Yeah. And I think we as adults and parents and just community members at large have to really take the time to talk to one another. How often do we, get back to work and, we're walking by Susan in a hallway and say, "Hi, Susan, how was your weekend?" in passing, not waiting to hear her response. And I know in my household now, I make it a point to ask my children, "How was your day?" "It was good." "Well, what was good about it?" What was bad about it? What could have been different? Now they ask me those questions every day I come home. Just setting that pattern, that stands to check in. And I think the more we do that, the more you'll realize you're helping so many.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. Well, we have, I think we can squeeze in one more question. And I know people are interested in knowing how to get in touch with you. So maybe if you could put that in the chat again after. But veterans, that's an area that's come up a lot. I know we have a focus on that in my mental health agency. Those who have seen combat are especially vulnerable to possibly consider committing suicide. Is there anything that you're doing specifically for veterans?
Absolutely. Our agency, the Mental Health Association, have is doing a lot with veterans. We have a suicide prevention program that's working strictly with veterans. We have a veteran support group that meets once a week. And they also are, our program also provides counseling to veterans and their families for free, which is something that's not normal in US. Like, free counseling services is not heard of, and we really try to reach out and get grants and funding to help support those kinds of programs for individuals who can't afford it. Our people may have Medicaid or no insurance, and where are they going to get help? Or the wait list to get into a program to have that is so long that they can't wait. So with the veterans, they're doing a lot of support group. We're actually having coffee with a vet in a couple of weeks so that we can share their stories and just be a support to them. Many of them have trauma that they're still dealing with. So these support groups helps them come together and share their stories and bond and learn from each other and grow from each other as well. So we do a lot of various support groups, social activities, just providing support to families as well as their children to help the veteran as well.
So that's wonderful. And when we get towards the end and we're kind of getting close to 8:30, but we have one more speaker. I'm going to be asking a question about whether there's some specific topics that people are interested in maybe having a follow-up webinar. So that may be something that bubbles up because I know it has come up a lot in our organization. So it's been an honor to have you with us, Maydeen. And one thing that you said really touched me. You said that we're ambassadors for change, and you are an ambassador for change. Thank you for everything that you've been doing, and we're so lucky to have you in the field. So thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
And last but absolutely not least, but she's the person who has the shortest bio for me to read for you this evening. Bonnie Black she's a past district governor from 2013, 2014 in District 7040. She retired from a career in mental health and advocacy, and she's the founding chair of the Rotary Action Group on Mental Health Initiatives. Bonnie, thank you for being here this evening.
You're welcome, Tina. Anybody wants to know my bio, if you have the Club Runner platform, it's there. It's public. We didn't need to go into it. But what can Rotarians do? Well, two past district governors can sit at a district conference in 2015 and look at each other and say, we need an action group on mental health. And that's what Ken LaFrancois and I had a discussion about that November. And within a few months was birthed the Rotary Action Group on Mental Health Initiatives. And he and I got that off the ground. He passed away January 4th after we got our approval, which was a shock to all of us. It was a massive heart attack. But in his honor, I knew that no matter what hurdles we had, and we did as a mental health initiative action group, we were going to make it. And when Gordon and his staff approached us almost 2 years ago now and said, this is going to be one of the priorities of my year, I was blown away. It was like, wow, things have really changed since I began in mental health. When the Rotary International president is looking at prioritizing mental health as the platform for the year. As Dr. Gradizza said, mental health is a universal human right. And we've heard many times that there is no health without mental. I refer to this as the neglected organ. We now talk about diseases and cures for every organ in our body, including our skin, which many people forget is an organ. But the brain has been the last organ to receive valid concerns. So what I really would like to share with you tonight is how you, in your Rotary Club, in your district, can begin to take action to assure that this evening's program is not going to just be a nice hour and a half and we leave each other. This is our homepage, and the URL is ragonmentalhealth.org. We have Gordon's brochure right up there. We left this up just so you could see this tonight, what we did on Suicide Prevention Day. And I'm going to take a little walk into building bridges of understanding for pediatricians. But we've got the three major tenets of this Rotary year: breaking stigma, raising awareness, and increasing capacity. Capacity, not only in our communities, which everybody engaged in the mental health system, regardless of country, I will tell you, they say we don't have enough practitioners. That's so true. And I'm not sure any country is going to have enough practitioners. But we first have to increase capacity within ourselves. We've heard it tonight. We need to understand. We need to learn so we can understand. Once we understand, then we can begin to take some action. And when we go down just on the homepage, it actually gives you ways to click in and find events over the globe, etc. But what I would like to point out to you is under the word engage, and I know Drew and I love this word because our theme was Engage Rotary Change Lives in 1314. We have this section on toolkits. These are examples of what you can do at your next Rotary meeting. We can take something like looking inward. This whole PowerPoint is driven by the fact that as Rotarians, we look outward. We look into our local community. We look into our international community. We care for others. We're always doing it outwardly. What do we do to care for ourselves? It is a 15-minute program. I have presenter notes that I can readily share with you so you don't have to sort of figure out what these slides mean. And especially in the US, we happen to use an NFL football player, very short video of how this, multi-Super Bowl ring winner, the receiver for Tom Brady for multiple years, breaks down and says how he's worthless, how hard his life is. He didn't get picked first round. He didn't get picked till the very end of the draft in his year, et cetera, et cetera. And you see this rawness that you don't see on the field. And we do this. We do a lot of negative self-talk. We also, in breaking stigma, we have to break it within ourselves. So this presentation has at the very end a QR code. And it takes you to that 5-question anonymous survey that actually it comes into us. We know by date and time. If you want to know your club's results, we can certainly give them to you. But this is really for President Gordon because he wants everybody who can to do this program and the survey, because without the program, the survey may or may not resonate well. I'm fine. It's a Likert scale. 5 ways you can answer each of the 5 questions. But he wants to see what is the mental wellness of Rotarians near the beginning of this year. And then he would love to have clubs redo this mid to late April so that when he stands on the stage in Singapore, he can say, Rotarians, Rotary members, because this is, Rotaractors are Rotary members too. Rotary members, this was your mental health at the beginning of our year. We've now opened up, we're breaking stigma, we're raising awareness, and this is what you rate yourselves as mental wellness now. Is this scientific? Lord, no. But it is a point in time survey that actually allows us to begin to say, that how are you? And we keep walking, but how are you really? We even have stickers, a template where you can get a certain Avery label and you can print them up for your club members. And you can just do this in the community. We, my club, happened to do it at an event. We did it at our Zone Institute 2 weeks ago. How are you really walking around? People go, oh, yes, I understand. And someone in the chat tonight said, the family of Rotary never fails. Well, I will tell you that every one of these quick little 6 toolkits, they are from Rotarians and their Rotary clubs. Quick little thing you also can do to begin to raise awareness and break stigma is the Don't Bottle It Up campaign. Okay. We also have Wellness in the Box. This was created for interact clubs for adolescents in high school to learn about depression and anxiety and some signs and symptoms so they can be peers walking around and saying, hey, how are you really today? You weren't talking at lunch and you typically talk at lunch. Well, they learn that. And built into the school through the Rotary Club is a way to guide those young people to a trusted adult who then knows how to connect them within community to ways to improve their mental status. We've got resilience, and Rotaract clubs have used wellness, Rotaract clubs and Interact clubs have used resilience, but I tell you, the parents that also see either of these programs in action, they benefit from it too. Is a creative problem solving toolkit. Tell you, is there a Rotary club that has never had conflict? We might be about peace and world understanding, but we're human. This is a wonderful tool to discern well and creatively solve a problem. One of the ones, though, that we talk about increasing capacity within community. A lever is, and they all have a toolkit right up like this. This is for pediatricians. Now, if your pediatricians are in the United States, they can get 5 CEUs for completing this. They need CEUs. If they're handed away to get them quickly, online, self-paced, they really, really like this. So this is a way to have a pediatrician actually learn about depression and anxiety in young people and early adolescents that they don't get in their full trainings. And with it comes the kits to give to parents, the worksheets to give to the kids. It is a wonderful thing. There is a little cost if the pediatrician wants to have hard copies of it. And clubs and districts that have put this into effect right now, they actually are doing district grants to pay for the hard copies for their pediatricians in a county, and the hard copies of the workbooks to be able to give to their families also. So this is just a really brief look at our website. I hope that we can answer many of your questions as the Rotary Action Group on mental health initiatives, including how to form your own district chapter. I know Nadine's up-and-coming chapter, July 1st, they actually get a 4-digit chapter number. They've got a 2-digit right now, but they are already an approved chapter. Many of you on the call, I've been looking at some of the districts here. You already are. As a Rotary Action Group member in Mental Health Initiative, it's open member meetings bi-monthly. Anybody can sign into our Zoom talk about or listen. Most people listen for ideas. So I appreciate having time here tonight and being able to show you that, yes, you can become engaged. Break the stigma. Like, let's stop using the word commit. It's no longer a felony to die by suicide. Let's say died by suicide, like you died by a car accident, you died by cancer, you died by. We must watch our language and become very first person in it. That's your first step in breaking stigma. Think about the words. Thank you.
Bonnie, thank you so much. We are so fortunate to have you in Rotary and in our zone. It's really amazing to think about you and another person just talking and look at everything that's happened since then. It's just absolutely amazing. I'm in awe. So, folks, I know some people have had to drop off, but I'm going to ask for 2 more minutes of your time because I do have a couple of questions for everybody. First is we're going to do what's called a waterfall. So, if you click on the chat, I'm going to ask you a question and I want you to put the answer in the chat, but I don't want you to hit send until I tell you. So here's the question. You can type, but don't send. Okay. The question is, what one action step will you take for your club or district in the next month? So go ahead, type it in, but don't hit enter yet. I'll give you a moment. What one action step will you take for your club or district in the next month? I'm going to count down from 5. When I hit 1, everybody hit enter. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Whoa. Oh my gosh. Look at all of that. This is excellent. Thank you, everybody. So my second question for you, and you can pop this in, you don't have to do the waterfall, but this is so wonderful because we can take a look at what you're saying and it will also help us. So I'm interested to know if you would like to have a follow-up webinar. And if so, is there a specific topic that you are interested in? Because there's so much to do, so much that we could potentially focus on. So if there's a topic that you're interested in, please go ahead and put that in the chat. And then while you're doing that, I have some thank yous. So there are a few people who behind the scenes were super supportive and helpful to get this webinar going. Ray Freeney from 7475, Brenda Halloran from 7080, Diane Donahue from 7430, Juanita Hodgson from 7010, and Carl Smith from 6380, and of course Drew Kessler, who I reached out to originally and asked if this could happen, and of course he said yes. And I wanted to say thank you again to all of our panelists. Thank you. Let's see, Drew Kessler, RI President Gordon McInally, Chuck Ngoglia, Dr. Valerie Gradisa, Collier Smith, Nadine Despino Da, and Bonnie Black. And I just wanted to say, with Gordon McInally's call to action around creating hope in the world and everything that you've heard about tonight with mental health and mental illness and things that we can do in our communities and in our clubs, think about that as you're considering Rotary's vision, that together we see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe in our communities and in ourselves. And I think that making that connection around mental health and wellness is something that we can all do. And I hope that you've all taken away some action steps where you can start to make a difference or continue to make a difference in your communities. And thank you all so much for being here this evening. Everybody really appreciates it. And hope we'll see you on a future webinar. Thank you.